Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today's obstacle is the Six of Wands, and the opportunity is the Page of Cups. So let's start with the Six. The Marseille deck card has these six intertwined wands. They're kind of interwoven in the middle there, and they're symmetrically balanced along two halves. I think the interpretation of the Marseille, as it often is pretty different to the Waite, but I think they're both valuable. Um, Considering this card, I like the I like the story that emerges from looking at its neighboring cards. The five shows I guess a scene of disarray. You got a bunch of individuals. One guy in the middle, he's got different colored boots on. They're all Are they fighting, or is it some sort of contest? Um, but yeah, there's definitely discord, disorganization in this whole scene. Now, with the six, we see quite a bit of unity. Um, maybe the five individuals that were, depicted in the previous card are now all lined up in the background there, and you got this new figure riding through on a horse, sitting, in a more elevated position. He's adorned with this uh, laurel wreath like thing, and then he's got another one attached to his wand. And then the next card is the King of Wands. Is it that character on a horse that has become this king? Who knows? But it's an interesting direction that the character in the six is heading towards. Maybe he's going to meet that character, metaphorically speaking. Now, in terms of the six, I think that as a warning, there's there's two interpretations. Both both deal with how impressionable people can be when it comes to opinions, but specifically opinions and ideas around actions. So around, let's say, physical force, violence. Like and I don't mean specifically someone on the street threatening you on the violence. I mean, of course, you're going to have a strong reaction to that. But I'm kind of thinking more in the sense of the role that violence or the monopoly on violence, plays in communities or groups of people, in the way that communities police themselves, or in the way nations police themselves in their relationship with other nations. And there's there's often a very heated, passionate debate or even struggle around what is legal and what is illegal, or what is morally right or wrong, because coming to a decision in that area of what is often, just philosophical reason discourse, that influences and shapes what kind of actions will be tolerated, which actions will not be tolerated, and how they will be enforced by the state, the group, whatever. So I see this card as, in that context, I see it representing either an individual whose actions, represented here by the wand that is particularly, it stands out, it's adorned with some sort of wreath, indicating it's an outstanding special action. So either you have an individual who is, let's say, exceptionally uh, strong physically, or just displays any sort of behavior to some exceptional degree, has any sort of, I mean, I think this would mostly deal with physical characteristics. Where we have an individual that displays some characteristic to some exceptional degree, often it has this charming, charismatic cascade that, influences all sorts of people to line up and organize around that individual. People are often, on a very deep primal level, inspired by things like strength and the capacity for violence and brutality. And then when they line up around that individual, when they try and synchronize with that individual because they could, they see it as a virtuous quality, they often do so by imitating and subjugating themselves to, you know, a philosophy that says that that is one of the highest values. So either I could see this as being one person essentially riding through town with a stick, saying like, "We're gonna get that motherfucker," and then a bunch of people being inspired by that act, being like, "Yeah," and taking up arms and following them because of that passionate energy that just takes them over. Or, and I think maybe this might be more common, is first there exists a group of people that all hold some particular action or actions in a virtuous light. They adore the idea of behaving in a certain way. And then this creates these individuals that are, that ride through town demonstrating their loyalty to that particular act. You could say virtue signaling, which at this point I feel like is kind of like a terrifyingly, boringly exhausted term, especially since very few people ever really clarify which virtue it is that they're signaling. Like often people have a hard time discerning that there's, lots of different virtues and people signal different ones. But in general, I think this card might be a warning of either all of our susceptibility to imitating the beliefs and values of the crowd, or our actions possibly inspiring a mob following. And next up, got the Page of Cups. Look at this cool dude just hanging out by the water with a cup with a fish in it. Just hanging out with this fish. Marseille deck, pretty similar. He's not by the water. He's on land. I think that's a slightly better visual interpretation of what this individual represents. This is a person who is making his first foray into the world of feelings, passions, possibly eventually even feelings and passions of a culture, some sort of moral structure, or maybe even a spirituality. But this guy is pretty new at it. The Marseille individual, I think, might be a little hesitant. He's got his cup, and in his other hand, I think that's like the lid for it. Maybe is he just opening it up and peering inside, or is he looking into it, trying to decide whether he should close it up? In the Waite deck, much more. I mean, I find this card very adorably silly. This person, I like that he's wearing what looks like a pattern of water lilies, which they appear on the surface of the water, but their roots tend to go down below the surface into the deep. And I kind of see this character as being the first initial flowering on the surface of the water, still very small in proportion to all of that lies underneath, all of the subconscious, so to speak. But nonetheless, it's the first flowering of conscious awareness in this realm of emotion. I see this character as representing the first, either the first admiration with or love for another, or the discovery of a new target of one's affection, right? So if I was doing like a psychic divination thing as opposed to a psychological analysis of the symbolism of these cards, I would say, oh, you're gonna fall in love with someone, or at least there's gonna be someone or something that you're gonna become, an admirer of on this emotional level. Um, but I think that this is an experience that any one of us can have at any time. This is something that could happen when you're in a relationship. You could for the first time see a new aspect of the person that you're with, uh, in a in an amazing, inspiring sort of light, so to speak. You could become enamored with some aspect of someone you haven't seen. Um, yeah. Also, I think it might indicate the awareness, and this is a more abstract interpretation, but I think this might indicate the awareness of the 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 relationship to another person as actually being a relationship to an avatar or a model of another person. So I think that often when people fall in love with each other, you know, they're not aware of of what I consider anyway to be the fact that the thing they're falling in love with is it's an incomplete picture of that other person. And I think it's either very rare or impossible to truly know someone completely, right? But the degree to which we know them can certainly range from, very shallow to very deep. And so I think this could signify becoming aware of the fact that the person that you're enamored with, the person you're in a relationship or whatever, coming to that first initial understanding that they are more than what you think you know them to be. That they exist in a more full sense outside of your conception of them, romantic as it may be. And I think this kind of realization overall, I think it certainly belongs in this optimistic kind of realm of opportunity, um, because, you know, understanding understanding someone a little bit better, even it's by way of realizing that you don't understand them completely, is probably better for your relationship with them. I think a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of shock comes from having someone act in a way that is surprising and something that you consider out of character. But, I like to just sort of put forth that if someone that you think you know really well is quote unquote acting out of character, it might be the case that you just didn't really know their character as well as you thought you did. Because, I mean, they are themselves and they are doing what they're doing. So maybe had you known them a little bit better, you would think of this as being in character. Maybe something they do rarely, but nonetheless something that they're capable of, right? So while it could be somewhat of a shock, or while it could be disenchanting for those individuals who are just head over heels with someone and think they're perfect, I think overall coming to the realization that there's a difference between the actual person and your perception of them, I think ultimately that's a good thing. It could also mean the disenchantment of, let's say, a parasocial relationship between you and some removed heroic figure that you're a huge fan of, whether it's um, I don't know, some sort of celebrity, or yeah, like an actor or a musician or something like that. It could it could be the realization that, you know, they are a person. They're not this perfect thing that you imagine them to be. And and yeah, and in the way that is useful and productive. Um, yeah, in the card that precedes it, the couple are just barely starting to recognize each other as uh, a quote unquote other can exist. So I think this is the first the first recognition of the other, and then potentially of the differences between how you perceive them and how they actually are. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.